Q is an interview-based podcast connecting listeners with musicians, writers, producers, etc. through curated playlists. This is Next in the Queue.
Hey, just wanted to pop in with a quick note on the episode. This was recorded over a year ago, right when Eternal Ring came out. And around that time, a lot of crazy things were happening in my life, so kind of put the podcast on back burner. And then I had a lot more current things coming out, but I love this episode and wanted it to see the light of day, so here we are. All the dates that we discuss have long since passed, obviously. And I hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Next in the Queue. This is an interview-based podcast that connects listeners with musicians, writers, producers, and really anyone in the industry through curated playlists. Today, I'm joined with Brendan of Milly. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you've been playing music for literally almost your entire life. Like, you started a band in like the 6th grade. How did you know like this was like something that you wanted to do?
I don't know. I guess the easiest answer would be as far back as I can remember, I think I just was interested in music. Like more than anything else, I tried, playing sports or like skateboarding and things like that, but music just stuck with me. And I think like a lot of people, it's such a cathartic thing that we can connect with, and sort of like I don't know, all the emotional aspects I feel like I was feeling even early on before I started playing music, but was listening to it. So it always just seemed kind of like this like fun, inviting thing to like try out or something.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, you like, especially like really early on, like starting a band in 6th grade, like playing a house show if your freshman year of high school. Like, I don't think like many, like maybe like 14, 15-year-olds, that's like freshmen in high school, I think, can say that they've done that.
Mm-hmm. I did have a lot of older friends. I was usually the younger one because I have a brother who's 2 years older than me who was playing in that first band. We were playing music together. So I think that definitely had something to do with it, just being around like older people that were kind of, I guess, like setting an example that like this was something that I could also like be a part of. Yeah.
Cool. And so Ferns ended kind of like in 2018, 2016, and you started Milly. Like, what was like the process of starting this band?
With Milly, it was cool because I still had the band Ferns, but I wanted to try to I wanted to try something different in terms of like I guess the short of it is I was feeling inspired by like music that was new to me at the time, that wasn't necessarily something that I felt like aligned with the music of Ferns. And I guess namely like I found that band Swirlies, and I'd never heard music like that. And I'm not saying Milly sounds like Swirlies necessarily, but it was kind of like this idea kind of sparked in my head where I was like, well, I want to try to make music that sounds like this, or at least like music that's different from the music I'm making. And it just felt, I guess, more low pressure to go after something like that under like a sort of like anonymous name, and like the pressure was like, I guess, like way lower on myself. So I felt like I could be more creative that way without I could have never put any of it out if I wanted to. So that was kind of cool to just like try things out.
Mm-hmm. You say that it was like easier to do that. In my head, it like kind of sounds like the opposite. Like it's harder to try new things and try and like be different than like doing like what you've always known and trying to step out of the box in that way. So I like hearing that perspective. So you like started getting into different bands that inspired you to start Milly. Like what, were you finding this music, or like what like got you into listening to new music?
Even to today, I still feel like I'm I've always had this sort of like obsessive brain where I'm on like Wikipedia really late into the night, like going down all the sorts of wormholes. And if it's not through Wikipedia, it's through like YouTube and stuff. So yeah, and at the time, I guess it's worth noting, I was living back home with my parents in Connecticut, and there's not really a whole lot going on there. And I grew up there, and most of my friends had moved out at that point. So I was spending a lot of time alone. So I feel like my kind of go-to back at least in those days was I would like get home from work and like smoke weed and go on YouTube and kind of just discover. So I think, yeah, that was kind of like leading discoveries. Not saying it's all, I don't even smoke weed anymore, but at the time I did.
Do you think because we went into quarantine around 2020 era, do you think that helped a lot with writing the music that for this album that just came out, or was it more of something that was already in the process? Because you guys had the 2 singles that came out in 2019 when you signed to Danger Bird.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, like the majority of the songs that came out on the new record were I was able to write them while I was just at home, not doing anything, and that kind of called back to the beginning of Milly, because the way that Milly started was I made all these home recordings, and we actually never really released them. I just put them out on Bandcamp in like at the end of 2017 into 2018, and they're long gone now. But some of those songs I ended up saving and releasing in like fuller forms like down the line that are out now. But it was a very similar I guess headspace that I was in, just being kind of bunkered down and like being able to just kind of focus on music, I guess. Yeah, it was cool. It's really grateful for that.
Yeah, and so you've lived on the East Coast before. You've moved to LA like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years ago. What do you think is like the differences that you see from living like on the East Coast and living on the West Coast?
A thing I liked about the East Coast over the West Coast was when I was living there, we would be booking tours a lot more because of how close cities are there, which is not the case here. It's like 6 hours to like San Francisco from LA. So that sort of convenience was cool. That was cool because you could kind of like, could go play in Boston like 3 times a year. And like, that's always good to recheck back in with like different cities and stuff. So I definitely think the East Coast has an upper hand with that. But I guess in terms of like overall, God, I hate to say it, but just like the vibes out in California feel a lot more relaxed to me. Like relaxed, but still, obviously like tapped into like a pretty like blossoming scene of people and things to do and stuff. It's like you get the city action you'd get in New York, but maybe a little more space, because you could still go to the beach and whatever. So yeah.
what do you think like made the East Coast feel like it was like always like running? I mean, I feel like, New York, it's like the city never sleeps. So, it's a statement for a reason. So,
Mm-hmm. I think like after growing up on the East Coast, there is like a sense of like I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like, so I'm like a Boston Red Sox fan, and like I don't even know if that's the right way to describe it. Sorry, it's kind of random. I just think like there's a more grinding it out sort of mentality that I feel like people on the East Coast carry. I don't know if that makes sense. Kind of going off what you're saying. So like, I feel like people in New York are always going. I feel like when I lived in New York, I was very like aware of. I feel like people are willing to like, you know, go to a show and go party till like 3 a.m, but then like, you know, wake up and go to work the next morning. Like, and it's not a big deal or something. So yeah. I guess that makes sense.
do you think like close earlier in LA? I think like I have a couple of friends there, and like a lot of things close. Like there's like no places that are open like at 3 a.m. I feel like in New York you can find anything open at some point in time.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I live in South Pasadena, which is like about 10 minutes from like, you know, Echo Park or like downtown and stuff, but it's a little out there, and it's more suburban. So like for my situation, it's so ridiculous. If I could just say for a sidebar, my Wi-Fi, it's like my roommate insists on having the most expensive Wi-Fi, but I swear to you, it goes out a couple times a day.
No worries. I was like, wait a minute, I couldn't hear what you're saying.
I guess I was trying to say yes, like correct. Yeah, like where I live, it's like good luck finding anything to eat or really do after like 10 p.m. I mean, in the city itself, I mean, it still goes pretty late, but nowhere like New York. New York is like convenience all the time in my experience.
Yeah, when I'm in New York right now. When I first moved here, I was like shocked about like how late everyone goes. And I was like coming from going to school in Miami, and I was like, oh, so literally you guys don't sleep at all.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
My experience, at least.
So can you like talk a little bit more about like the basement shows that you had? Like I heard that you had like a basement show in like your parents' house, like freshman year. Like how was that orchestrated? Like what went into it as being like, you know, a kid?
Yeah. Well, I mean, throughout the 4 years that I was in high school, we were throwing basement shows out of my parents' house. And I guess with that also there was a park in town that we would throw like outdoor shows at too, kind of in the summertime. And I think a lot of that was kind of just like the result of a few things. I mean, so like we were, I guess, touring on a more like on a DIY type circuit on the East Coast, and we would go play in Philly and play in basements. So it was always kind of like in Boston and stuff. So it was always kind of like revalidated or like it was just kind of like always a presence. So we wanted to do it ourselves too. And I mean, it started, the first show ever was because it's kind of an interesting story if we can take it back to when people would be like married on Facebook. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah. So my friend in high school, who I was a freshman in high school, and I was friends with this girl, Kat, and she was a senior, but she was married to this dude, Al, and he went to a different high school, but he had a band, and he added me and like found my band and was kind of like, he truly convinced me. He was like, do you like, because he'd be like, where do you rehearse, whatever. I'd be like, my parents' basement. And he truly convinced me like, oh, we should throw a show down there. And I was like, damn, I've never thought of that, but like, sure. And I asked my parents, and they were like surprisingly cool about it. Especially my dad was always like really about it. So then we did a show with like our two bands, and we were just kind of nobodies, obviously, and just had like whatever friends or like neighborhood kids.
So you had like neighborhood kids come and
yes. Yeah. And then throughout, high school, as I got to know more people in the state of Connecticut, and more bands and stuff, I guess it kind of grew more and more. And then we started having like out of state bands come and play as well. But, it was really cool. It was really something I thought would be cool if I, was ever like a grandpa, or like could tell like cool stories about it or something.
Yeah, and so you were like touring like kind of like Boston, maybe Philly or New York. I don't know how far Connecticut is from there, but I feel like they're, depending on where you are, it's not too far. I mean, I was gonna ask if like it was like a lot to do like as like a kid, but I mean other kids do like sports that are like that take them to different states and things like that. So I'm sure it was like nice to balance, but like how were you just playing in basements? Because I feel like since you were underage, you couldn't really play at any venues.
Yeah, and it wasn't really until at least I turned 18 that we were able to play like actual like venues and things. I mean, especially in like a place like Boston or New York or whatever. But no, I feel like we always sort of had the energy. I don't really know why it is the way it is, but I've always just been like super like excited, like been able to stay excited and look forward to like the next thing. So we were always just trying to do like as much as we could within reason.
Mm-hmm. So like later down the line of Milly, like you had your friend come on, Yarden. How did like they get involved in like helping out with Milly?
Yarden's role is really special and like interesting and unlike one I've ever had in like any other bands I've been in, where like I'm still very much in charge of like songwriting, and any sort of like creative stuff is usually on my shoulders more than his, although he does play on the records. It's mostly my sort of guidance that he's following, but he essentially is like the functioning manager for the band, or at least we're like co-managers. Like anything business related, it's me and him talking about it, and he's way more savvy with things like that than I am, so he really takes a lot of weight off my shoulders, which in my opinion is just as important as like being like, say, like a good drummer in a band. Like especially on tour, he really, really loves driving, and he grew up with one of those like, I forget what they're called, but they're like it's like a globe for like kids, and there's all these like sort of quizzes on it. It's like a actual like a globe of the earth, and it'll like kind of quiz you to find like certain things in like different countries and stuff like that. So he's extremely savvy with geography, and it's really been endlessly entertaining, like touring and like showing up to cities and him knowing like that this city's famous for this, or we should do this there, or like whatever. So yeah, he's just a really smart dude, and really grateful to have him around.
Yeah, you do need someone that's like willing to drive the long like hours.
I don't even do it, to be honest with you. This past tour, I didn't drive once. I laid down with noise cancelers in.
I feel like with my family, I'm the person that's the driver. Uh, I don't know if I'm like being that person, but I'm like, if anyone's gonna do it, it should be me.
Some people are into it. It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like one thing I miss about being in New York. Like from being in New York, I don't drive anymore. I feel like I like driving, but off topic, we can not talk about.
You should like rent a car and then like go upstate for the
Yeah, just rent a car for a day. That would be nice. Yeah, so Eternal Rain came out last week. How long has it kind of been in the works?
Well, we wrapped up recording it a year ago, so it did its annoying thing of building anticipation where you have to kind of just let the album roll out with every single and all that. So, although I will say, one of the songs on the majority of them were written right before the pandemic or during, but there's one song, track 2, which is called Sedation. And that song was one of the first songs I ever wrote for the Milly project back in like 2017. And it just kind of hung around and then got some new, I guess, parts added to it.
Mm-hmm. So, in an interview that I heard that you did with another, like one of your close friends, a while back, like literally almost a year ago, you said that originally had 12 songs. There's only 9.
Mm-hmm.
So are they just cut? Is there like a deluxe edition possibly, or
to be straightforward with you, we had a member that we kicked out of the band and he was singing on 3 of those songs.
So
they're just gone. They've they're vaporized.
Okay.
We've trashed all. It's all in the trash can. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was just wondering. So the playlist that you picked for today's episode is Eternal Ring Inspo. So these are like songs that kind of influenced the album. Listening through it, there's like a lot of like emo heavy driven bands on here. Like the first song from Title Fight, Hawthorne Heights. Like where do you think they influenced most in the album?
Well, the fun thing about this playlist that I did not include this insight, but for the most part, they're in chronological order, like corresponding with the tracks on the album that they had an influence on.
That's nice. So, like,
I really tried to nail it. Like,
I love that. I love the work, and you're like the first Apple Music user I've had, though.
Well, actually, I use Tidal now, but I have Apple Music as well. But yeah, no, everyone's on Spotify.
Yeah, everyone. I'm a girl of convenience. I wish I could. Tidal is better. Yeah, I've always used Spotify, so I'm like, I'm not willing to change yet. I will eventually, maybe.
I get it. I do. No, the only person I've convinced to change is my girlfriend. We're both on Tidal. We've been on Tidal all year, and it's pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're still one of the top ones, and like they have like cool playlists I've seen that they've posted. But like, what was your favorite song off of Eternal Ring, and like, which one are you like most excited to play live?
My favorite song currently is also the one I'm most excited to play live, and it's the song Stuck in the Middle, because it is a 9-minute song. And that's also, I messed up and didn't mention this before, that's also a really old song. Like the OG version is from like 2017 or 2018, but I think the original was like 4 minutes long, and we kind of decided to let it go crazy.
Yeah, I love a long song. I think another like really long song that I love is Sunglasses by like Backcountry New Road. And there was a time where I listened to it like back to back to back all day. And like if you listen to it like 4 times, that's already like 20 minutes. It's kind of fun to do stuff like that. Yeah. So you're playing an LA show December 1st with Waveform, who's like another Connecticut band. I mean, they're in New York now, but how did you guys like connect?
It's cool you're asking this because they're pretty pivotal in the story of Milly, because they had put like their first release ever on Bandcamp in 2017, and I had found it. One of my old bandmates had found it just looking under the like Connecticut tag on Bandcamp, and he had sent it to me, and then I like, I went to like their Facebook page and they had like 30 something likes, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, cause no disrespect to Connecticut or like where we've come from or whatever, but like, I guess at that point in time, I wasn't too excited on music coming out of Connecticut. And to find their music and it was actually like really good, I was like, I have to befriend these people, like whoever's behind this. So I just like reached out to them, and we just struck up like a friendship. And at that point I was living in New York. But anyway, when I moved back to Connecticut a few months later, I hung out with them a couple times, and I was, sending them the early Milly stuff, and they were sending me their stuff. And even up in, fast forward to Eternal Ring being written, like I was still sending all the demos for that album to Dan from Waveform and getting feedback from him. And he especially has been like really supportive of Milly, Jarrett as well from Waveform, but Dan definitely has had like a lot of influence on me. So it's awesome that they're going to come out to LA for the first time and like play our album release show.
Yeah. And looking at like all of the music videos that you've released for, I mean, just like overall, a lot of them seem to like have like 90s music video influences, like, like with like the green screen backgrounds, like the very like vivid colors. Is there a reason? Are you just like paying homage to that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now where we're at, we've just kind of landed in a good position where like we essentially have 2 people who make all our music videos. It's like our friend Justice Von Ott, who's like done the majority of our videos, and he played in Milly at one point. So like, and he's like one of my best friends out here, and we've just bonded for hours over the same sort of like music as well as visual things. And I think we both just have a really soft spot for like things like Napoleon Dynamite or like any 90s Nickelodeon really. And then of course, if you start to think about like music videos from the 90s, that was, in my opinion, the best era of music videos, like bands like Flaming Lips and like Smashing Pumpkins and stuff. So it's fun when you I guess we're just kind of in a position where I don't really ask for anything. He just kind of comes up with the concepts, and they're always pretty cool, and we're down.
Yeah, like watching them kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen any of these shows, but like early, like late 90s, early 2000s, like shows like Buffy, Charmed, One Tree Hill, they would have like spots, like in Buffy it's the Bronze.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like you'd be a band that would play there like after the show. It's like it's so funny, like the Bronze was a place where it was like a kid bar, but they were teenagers. It was like a place, it was a bar, but they were teenagers and they called it the Bronze. And like bands would play there after, Buffy had killed a vampire or something.
Yeah.
Milly would very much be a band that would play there.
I would do it if we could go back in time and do it. I was going to say during the pandemic, I was watching some One Tree Hill. There's definitely some deep cut influences or references to some bands in that show, like some posters on the wall. I've picked up on that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like some of the shows like got me like into like the music that I'm into right now.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any plan to like tour on this album, or is that still something that's like being talked about? Since you're in California, it's a little harder to do routing that way.
Yeah, we have a West Coast tour that we're going to be doing in December, or I guess it's like the end of November into December, which kind of coincides with that album release show. Just West Coast stuff though. A couple more days with Waveform, and then we're doing like kind of like a solo run up the West Coast, and we're doing 2 shows with the band Enum Claw, which we're really excited.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
But no East Coast for the foreseeable future.
Nothing planned, but I would love to. Hopefully something. I think we might tour to like Texas in March, but maybe we'll just stretch it from there. I don't know. I'd like to go home and play some shows out there. That was fun.
So you were talking about Waveform earlier and how like they were like a big inspiration helping with Milly. Are there any other bands kind of like up and coming like Waveform that have been like an inspiration?
Not really. I guess this is like a good thing and a bad thing, but I feel like I just am so like enamored by like 90s or early 2000s music that I don't really keep up with music as much as I should. I will say Dive has definitely been like kind of a constant influence, and they're like, I guess, a more contemporary band, and I'm really obsessed with the first Yuck album, like the self-titled one with all the bonus tracks. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. But yeah, I'd say that's it probably.
Are there any like bands in LA that are exciting and that you have been listening to?
Yeah, I guess there's this band called Rocket that's playing our album release show also. I'm betting they're the next thing. They're really cool. They have a couple songs out that I really like, and they're like pretty close friends of ours. So maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think they're tapping into something special. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you want to plug or share with everyone?
No, I think you nailed it.
You nailed it. You got
it.
Thanks for tuning into the episode. Since this recording, Milly has indeed come back to New York, and they had Rocket open for them, which was cool to see. I really loved seeing them come back to the city. And it was cool to see it come full circle since we got to talk about Rocket in the episode. But obviously, since Eternal Rings release, Milly has also put out an EP, which you should also check out. It's called The Freed Milly. And that's it. See y'all next time.